So welcome everybody. This is our second series of energy healing, which is part of our ongoing COVID and cancer series. And I'm Rachel Justice, for those of you who don't know me, and along with Jillian Levinson, I co-lead the Woman to Woman program. And as I mentioned, this is the second of a 3-session series about energy healing with Emma Ehrenzeller, who some of you may remember from last year when she did a fantastic hypnosis series for us. It is not mandatory that you attended the session last week. And we do hope that if you enjoyed today and are able, you will attend the third session, which is not next week. We are skipping it because of our reunion, making a plug for our reunion here. If you have not already registered for our 22nd reunion. It's going to be on March 16th at 6:30 p.m. So please do that, but we didn't want to dilute our programming that day with any extra sessions. So please join us for that, and then please join us the following week for the final energy healing session. I'm going to turn it right over to Emma because there's so much great content for her to cover. And she, as I mentioned when we were waiting to come on, if you have not heard Emma lead a session before, you are in for something really, really special, memorable, wonderful, educational, and really community building. So Emma, thank you again for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. As you know, I'm obsessed with doing these sessions. I love coming in and getting to meet you guys and talk with you and introduce you to some of these topics. So like Rachel was saying, last week we talked all about chakras. This week we are taking a turn and talking instead about past lives, what they are, how you can use them in your healing practice, and the different theories behind them that can actually really align with whatever your own personal, spiritual, or religious beliefs are. So we have a lot of ground to cover today. If you do have questions as you go through, please drop them in the chat and we're going to have some fun. So in our agenda today, we'll take about an hour to cover the basics of past lives and past life regression. We're going to go through some of the research and the really interesting case studies behind past life regression. And as I always like to conclude our sessions, we're going to talk about some ways you can start doing past life work on your own. And we'll also end with a hypnotic meditation like we always do. So can you guys see my screen okay? Everything looking good? Sweet. All righty. And for anybody new this week, my name is Emma Ehrenzeller. I'm so happy to be with you guys today. I'm a certified life coach and hypnotist, and my passions are really understanding the overlaps between science and spirituality. I think it's so fascinating, and there's so many good practical tools in there that can not only expand your own understanding of your life, the universe, spirituality, whatever that may be, but also give you practical tools to use in your own healing, self-help, and wellness practice, whatever that may be for you. So let's go ahead and dive in. So past life regression, what really even is it? So past life regression is exploring past lives and specifically understanding the experiences from those lives which hold some sort of significance to your current life today. Now, the ultimate goal of past life regression is to typically find some kind of experience from a past life that maybe has a connection to an unexplained phobia in this life, or a soulmate connection kind of relationship in this life. Some people just like to explore their past lives and see what kind of comes up in a past life regression, but typically there is this end goal of alleviating some kind of intense trauma or anxiety that's presenting in this life. And now, past life regressions can be done by a lot of different practitioners. I'm a hypnotist, as you know, so I'm going to be talking from that lens, but there are people who are psychics and spirit guides who connect with past lives. There are people who do Reiki healing who might involve a past life aspect there. There are people who might just call themselves past life therapists. Typically, they are going to be using hypnotic techniques, but just know this is a pretty diverse field within the realm of spirituality. But more often than not, the people doing past life work also have some kind of background in hypnosis. So that's a little one-on-one on what they are. Now, there are a few theories behind how past life regression works, and I want to make it very clear that my goal today is not to convince you of one or the other. I have my own thoughts and opinions. I hold them pretty loosely. I find this very fascinating, but my goal today is just to give you a purview of the different thoughts and ideas out there about past life regression, and then equip you to have your own thoughts and opinions on them. So the first main belief system is that reincarnation is real. And in a past life regression, you are actually going back to a past life that your soul was born into at a different time and exploring experiences from that life. So if you're not familiar, reincarnation is the idea that a single soul, that your soul is born into multiple human experiences. So you're born, you live a life, you pass on, and then you're born into another life. And in most belief systems, this isn't just being reborn for the heck of it, for the fun of it. Instead, it's more so part of a path to spiritual transcendence. You're learning karmic lessons. You are becoming more and more of a fulfilled, authentic human and soul. There are a lot of different nuances in how people believe this, but more often than not, it's this idea of you're kind of like climbing the mountain to spiritual transcendence. And that's termed a lot of different things in different cultures. So what I find really interesting about reincarnation is it's not just Hinduism and Buddhism that believe in it. So if you've heard of reincarnation before, typically they're associated with those religions, Hinduism, the major religion in India, Buddhism. We talked about both of these a lot last week. You also see connections to reincarnation in Jainism and Sikhism. Those are two other large religions in India and South Asia. Interestingly, you also see notes and connections to reincarnation in some sects of Judaism. What I find particularly fascinating is in early forms of Christianity, they also believed in reincarnation. Some historians talk about how in early forms of the Bible, they actually mention reincarnation as part of the belief set. But then at, one of the meeting of the minds of the church leaders, for whatever their reasons and purposes, they decided to remove that from the Bible. So again, my goal here isn't to convince you of one thing or the other, but I really think it's fascinating that a lot of these ancient religions have some form of connection to reincarnation, even if it is, a minor sect here or there. So just something to be mindful of. Now let's get into the other theory behind past life regression, and that is the idea that it's really just a metaphor that your subconscious mind is creating for you. So to clarify more of what past life regression really is, like if you were in a session with a hypnotist in particular, that would look like getting into a really deep hypnotic state, which if you're not familiar, that means just getting really relaxed and doing a lot of visualization. That's essentially all it is. And from that place, opening your mind to essentially being prompted to see some kind of scene in front of you. For instance, with one of the last ones I did with one of my clients, she saw herself in a European village, like picking apples, and then she was in a home with her family, and then she was by the water. You go through these different scenes from these lives. You notice what the dynamics are like with the people around you, who those people are, whether they're in your current life. It's a lot about exploration, and like I mentioned earlier, identifying if there are any experiences from that life that are somehow relevant or holding you back in this life. So with the metaphorical theory, the idea is that this is all created by your subconscious as a way to help you better understand or release a trauma or an issue in your current life. So it's almost like a parable, right? Your subconscious is trying to teach you something with these stories that it creates in the form of a past life story. Now, what I find really interesting about these two theories is they don't necessarily contradict each other. I personally believe some past life experiences that I've had were more of a metaphor created by my subconscious. It felt like that kind of imaginative space, whereas others, and particularly those of my clients, they're much more emotional. They're much more visceral. They feel much more real. And in those experiences, it does feel much more like something that had been lived, like a memory rather than a dream or an imagination. So these two don't necessarily have to contradict each other. Whatever resonates with you, follow that. But I do like to kind of share these two because it's very fascinating how it all can work. So what's the overall purpose of past life work? Like, why do people do it in the first place? The first, like I've already mentioned, is really going to be this release of old traumas, phobias, anxieties that haven't really otherwise been helped. And we're going to talk more about this as we go through. One big takeaway that I've definitely seen in most of my clients is clarity and confidence. They're able to see the issues that they've struggled with in this life from a new big picture vantage point. And that gives them more clarity on how to manage it in this life and more confidence that they will overcome it. It can also give you a new viewpoint on current life relationships. So like I mentioned, if let's say you are in a past life regression, you see people in the scene, sometimes the, brunette friend that you see in this scene in your mind's eye, you know that they don't look like your mother, for instance, but you recognize them and say, oh, I see this person, they're my friend in this past life. But in my life, I recognize that this is actually my mother, and this is a different dynamic we had in a past life. And sometimes that can give new insight on current life relationships and the dynamics that you have. And then the final one, which people rarely come to past life work looking for this, but most people leave past life work gaining it, is a sense of peace and acceptance about death and passing through this life. We're going to talk a little bit more about the themes that come up there, but it is kind of seeing yourself as just another sort of, not to use the word incarnation again, but just another version of the same soul experiencing life. So it helps you zoom out a bit, essentially. So let's talk about some of the research behind past life work. The first one is more theoretical, whereas the next two are more extensively and empirically documented. So the first has to do with trauma and how our brains are able to integrate traumatic experiences. Now, what I'm about to explain is something that if you've ever read books like The Body Keeps the Score, things about how the brain and body interact with trauma, this will sound familiar to you. And what's interesting with past life regression is it takes the same kind of framework and applies it instead of present life, day-to-day trauma, and applies it to things that have happened in the past life. So essentially, when people come to past life regression wanting to work through, an inexplicable anxiety response that they're having, phobia, this is more or less the framework that we're going through. So there's some kind of trigger that they're experiencing. And to that trigger, it brings up an atypical reaction. So if we take an example of past life and present life sort of, phobias, maybe that is you absolutely despise bathtubs. You have a phobia of bathtubs. You have no reason or experience. Your parents don't remember anything. You never had a bad experience with bathtubs, but you refuse to get in them. You won't get in the jacuzzi. You still shower and you're hygienic, but you have this phobia of bathtubs. You don't know why. The trigger there is the bathtub. The response is going to be this phobia and everything that comes with it. In a past life regression, the goal is to explore a past life and particularly re-experiencing that traumatic experience connected to the trigger. So in this case, in this example, let's say we explore the past life and maybe the client finds that in one of their past lives, they drowned in a bathtub or something really negative happened to someone they loved in a bathtub. And that is now presenting in this life as that phobia. Now, the goal here isn't knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It's not just to say, oh, well, this happened in a past life, and so that's why I have this. Knowledge can only take us so far in the healing journey. Instead, the goal is to help the brain understand that the past is the past. And this is the same thing when it comes to healing and treating traumatic experiences from your present day life. So in the brain, this interesting thing happens when we go through a traumatic experience and it either isn't processed, it's really just a super intense experience. Maybe we just push it down and ignore it. The brain does this thing where it kind of blurs the past and the present. So if this is the present, this is the past. When we go through intense trauma and it isn't processed the way it needs to, the two get blurred. So you go through your present day life, you're moving and grooving, but then you see a bathtub. Or maybe, you know, if we think about veterans and how they have to navigate trauma from their own life, it's the 4th of July and there's fireworks. That serves as a trigger for the past life to come through and really interact and hinder the present or the past experience. The two are blurred and you're responding in the present moment as if the past is an active threat when it's not. I know this is a little convoluted, so please feel free to drop questions in the chat if you need. But the goal of a past life regression or even just a present life regression is to re-experience the initial trauma so your brain can see, wait, that was the past. That's not happening right now. I don't need to be in this like fight or flight intense mode every time this thing happens. So the goal ultimately is to take it from here to here. So it doesn't change that this was a hard event or a scary thing with the bathtub or, you know, current life trauma. The goal is to simply show the brain the past is not happening now and it's not an active threat. This is the first one. It's the most complicated one. Does anyone have any questions? Robin, did you have a question? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and move on.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If let's say the fireworks and that triggers the past, like you said, can it possibly the brain process it where like something's going to happen because I'm seeing this, like
yeah, it's essentially, the brain is making a connection of like, oh, it's the loud noises from the fireworks, and the brain doesn't hear fireworks. Instead, the brain is associating that with gunshots, explosions. And then it's saying, okay, we need to respond to this as if we're in a war zone, when in reality, you know, it's a 4th of July picnic, it's XYZ that isn't a threat. It's responding to things that aren't threatening because for some reason they're associated with something that was threatening in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just thinking like, does the brain like sort of create a story of like, maybe it's like, this more trauma with that happening, that kind of intensified the trigger, the fear of the moment. If that makes sense.
Do you mean as if it kind of becomes more of like a narrative, like the brain starts to, like the person starts to actively fear these things? Or like I fear fireworks rather than like I fear fireworks because they sound like gunshots or explosions or something like that? I don't know if that made more sense at all.
Like the brain translates it to something where it becomes more scarier at the present and not, I guess, relating to the past, but yet, how do you say this? The brain creating a different story for the present that makes it more intensely scared based on the past.
I think that is definitely possible, especially when it comes to people fearing, like knowing that they have intense reactions to things like loud noises. And then there gets to be a lot of anxiety around events like the 4th of July, where there are a lot of loud noises that are like the past, but it also takes on kind of like a new story, like you were saying, of like, yeah, this is from my past, but it is creating such intense effects in my present that I also just fear it for that in itself. Does that make sense? Is that helpful to answer? Yeah, it's really fascinating. And, past life work takes that same kind of theme, and rather than events from the past in your present life, it goes back even deeper and tries to understand, are there events from a past life that you're unaware of that are also driving forward this trigger and the response that's unwanted? Yeah, awesome. Any other questions there? Great. Yeah, Jerry, go ahead. Here, I think you just unmuted yourself, or you just muted yourself. Yeah. There you go.
If I'm having a very intense reaction and my reaction doesn't necessarily suit or match with the event,
Mm-hmm.
then I can assume that there's something in there that I need to dig around
Mm-hmm.
a little bit deeper to try to figure out, what is this reminding me of, or what did
Yeah.
what happened? Why am I overreacting?
Right. And I love that you put that in quotes, because to your brain, it's not overreacting. You're doing exactly what you need to do to keep you safe. And precisely that, like whether it's something from your own past, from your childhood, young adulthood, whatever it may be, or something from a past life, whenever we have, these atypical reactions to something, it is generally, I'm not going to give a blanket absolute, but it is generally because we had some kind of experience or we were taught something at a young age. That means whatever is happening right now in the present is a threat, and we need to kind of put like all systems on alert. Even if with our conscious logical mind, we're like, wait, no, it's fine. Like I'm safe. I don't need to go into overdrive, but we do anyways. Does that make sense? Is that helpful, Sherry? Awesome. Well, great. Let's move right along. Thank you guys for the questions. Feel free to keep bringing them. So next we have past life memories in children. You might have maybe stumbled upon some of these stories in the past, but there's a number of cases where young children, generally toddler years, like 2 to 3 years old, share these highly descriptive, specific memories that are very much not their own. These are often connected to bizarre behavior, birthmarks, and phobias, like we've been talking about. Now, unfortunately, I cannot convey the level of rigor and intensity that these case studies have been recorded, but I do want to share with you that there is an entire division at the University of Virginia Medical School called the Division of Perceptual Studies that is focused on all this kind of work. They talk about past life experiences like this in children, psychic experiences, paranormal, very interesting and not what you would expect from a school like UVA. But this Division of Perceptual Studies focuses on this, and this really started with the work of a psychiatrist, Ian Stevenson, in the 50s and 60s. This kind of fell into his lap. He wasn't really on a mission to prove that reincarnation was a thing. Even at the end of his life, he said, reincarnation right now is a leading theory, but maybe we'll figure something else out about why children have these bizarre memories. So what I will say is this is done in a very, very scientific way. And I'm going to leave it at that. But they found over 2,500 of these cases of children with these past life memories. They're found across the globe too. So they're found in places, yes, that they actively believe and teach about reincarnation, but they're also found all over the US, all over Europe, places where reincarnation is a topic that most toddlers aren't really going to encounter. And the majority of the time, these memories are solved, meaning they identify the person whose life and typically the way that they passed aligns exactly with what the child had been talking about. So we're going to go through one example. I might skip the second because I want to make sure we stay on track with our time. So the first is a 4-year-old boy in Louisiana. His name was James. He started waking up in the middle of the night yelling, airplane crash, plane on fire, little man can't get out. Now, pretty bizarre for a 4-year-old. From then on, he started talking about specific details of plane engineering and World War II aircraft that he had not previously been exposed to. So one example the family gave is, once he started talking about this all the time, they watched a World War II documentary with him on the History Channel. And the narrator was talking about how this one type of plane that they were using was called a Zero. And the little boy kept saying, okay, that's not a Zero, that's a Tony, he has it wrong. And the parents were like, okay, like, sure, whatever. But then they were like, well, maybe we should look into this. They ended up doing some research and found that, yes, the 4-year-old Louisiana boy was correct. It was the History Channel, and their narration and research was wrong in what they were sharing. It was actually called a Tony, or whatever the correct terminology was. There's a number of things like this that the family cited where it was hyper specific and he just inexplicably knew this information. He also told his family that in his last life, he was also named James, and he flew off of a ship called the Natoma. And after, this went on for a few months, the parents did some of their own research and actually found a pilot named James who flew off of the USS Natoma Bay and had actually been killed in active warfare in a plane crash. And the case studies are often like this. I'll flip to the next one and you can read through it if you like, but it's these hyper-specific details that a child will begin sharing. Sometimes it's even their behavior, or they begin speaking in a dialect that they've never learned. It's really fascinating, the kinds of things that will happen. And generally around ages 6 and 7, the intensity of all of it begins to fade away as memory and parts of the brain develop in a different way at those ages. But if you are interested, the work of Dr. Jim Tucker is what has been continued at UVA, and I highly recommend you doing some of your own digging. These stories are very, very interesting. So next, we also have similarities in near-death experiences. So if you're unfamiliar, a near-death experience is more or less exactly what it sounds like. It's someone who essentially died or almost died and then was resuscitated. And what you see on the screen is a snippet from the British Journal of Psychiatry from 1988. This was from a review where they were bringing together a number of different studies about the common themes in NDEs. And there are a few things that people will see and experience. The first, the one that I personally like to think about the most, is that this near-death experience comes with peaceful and accepting feelings. Now, this is even if the way that they passed was more traumatic. One of the reviews talked about in this article was collecting experiences from a number of Swiss mountain climbers who had fallen off the mountain at some point. Even in that very traumatic way to potentially pass on, they all shared that it was a peaceful, accepting moment, even though we would think of that as a very scary experience. Many people mentioned that they were greeted by guides or loved ones. One of the most common things is they have a vision of essentially themselves floating above their body and seeing the scene going on, hearing what people are saying. And there's often the imagery of a bright light, a blue sky, or some kind of like tunnel with again, bright light at the end. So I like to include this in, past life regression in our conversation today, because this is also what a lot of people see when doing a past life regression. And when they progress to the end of whatever life they were exploring, they see themselves floating above their body. They feel these peaceful, accepting feelings, even if they went in a traumatic kind of way. So I just find it, comforting to know that the people who have gone there and back, even in ways that we would think of as scary, it was actually a peaceful experience for them. So I always like to include that here as well. So, like we mentioned, the outcomes of past life work, releasing old traumas, clarity on how to manage themes, a new understanding of current life relationships. And as the NDEs really bring up a sense of peace and acceptance about passing through this life. And I would like to just quickly pause here. Does anyone have any questions on those case studies or near-death experiences, anything like that? Cool. Awesome. So how can you start past life work on your own time? Now, the first thing obviously would be working with a past life regression hypnotist, practitioner in any capacity. But if you're not in a place where you want to start that right now, you just want to start exploring on your own, there's a few things you can do. You want to start by reflecting on any quirks or phobias, or even just strong beliefs that you've had about yourself, the world, especially if they came from a young age and you've never really been able to explain them. You also want to think about relationships that have felt like just soulmate connections, right? And this can be in a loving way, right? Maybe like a partner, a sister, a best friend. It can also be in more of a difficult relationship kind of way, someone you feel like you've never been able to let go of, even if they weren't maybe the best person in your life. You can also think about any birthmarks or even birth defects that you may have had. Sometimes these are connected. In the work of the UVA department I was discussing, they have an entire book dedicated to birthmarks connected to these past life memories in children. And then the next step will be setting intentions to learn more about any significant past lives that might be connected to anything that you've brought up. You can do this to understand more about them. You can seek out your dreams, do some free journaling or meditation. Now you're probably like, okay, Emma, but what does that actually mean? What is setting an intention? So Ainsley McLeod is a spirit guide, connector, author. I don't know his official title, but he's written a number of books about past lives and past life regression. And when he encourages people to really start this work on his own, and he has a script like this to encourage people to start exploring these lives on their own time. So whether you decide to do this before bed to learn more about your past lives and your dreams, or if you want to do this before journaling, writing it in your journal, and then just freehanding any images that come to mind, anything that you feel like is passing through you, writing about that in a totally non-judgmental way. You can also just repeat something like this to yourself before you go into a meditation and just get curious about the things that arise in your mind. He gives this script to say, I call upon, and here you would insert whatever your own beliefs are. If it's spirit guides, if it's my ancestors, if it's God, if it's the universe, if you're someone who's more agnostic, you could say my subconscious, right? Whatever feels good for you, inserting that there, and then saying to help me explore the past life connected to my fear of bathtubs, my relationship with my husband, to my XYZ issue I haven't been able to overcome. Right? Just setting that intention and from a very non-judgmental space, exploring then what comes up. So it really gets to be that simple when you do this on your own time. I really recommend Ainsley McLeod's book, The Old Soul's Guidebook, if you want a number of exercises like this to start exploring your own past lives. I read it a few years ago and it was a fantastic read. And I did find a lot of these kind of scripts and like setting this intention helpful to give me insight on my own past lives. And I didn't really think it would. I was like, I'll try it. But it was really interesting to see what came up in my dreams and meditations when I really started to get curious about this work. So a lot of information today. I do want to pause here before we get into the hypnosis portion and see, does anyone have any questions? No?
No.
I actually have a question, Emma.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, if there's anything in terms of past lives related to illness, and again, the common thread here of the folks on this call is that everyone here, has some sort of, cancer
Right.
or major, medical condition. And I'm wondering kind of how that might play into all of this. I think the birthmark thing is absolutely fascinating, but I'm wondering sort of what the past life community thinks about illness in a current life and how that might be related.
Yeah. So in that book I just mentioned, The Old Soul's Guidebook, McLeod talks a lot about that actually, in talking about how, for instance, I think he cited one person he had worked with, they had always had lower back pain. It had never been fixed by a chiropractor, stretching, XYZ. And in their session, he worked with his spirit guides and they told him that in a past life, this person had, I think, died maybe by a gunshot wound to the lower back. And it was really interesting. Once he had that insight and that clarity, his lower back pain finally went away. And so when we think about chronic illness, chronic injury, particularly the areas that are affected, kind of similar to, chakra work, a lot of people do believe if you have energy that's kind of blocked in one area, or maybe energy that is holding trauma, that is a space that can build up and cause illness or disease. So that is what a lot of people within, the past life realm, they do believe as you release more of this trauma, you release more of these attachments from past lives, yes, your mental wellness can improve, but if you do identify, if there is a past life relevant to what you're experiencing in this life, particularly with your health, some people do believe that that can be impactful to what you're going through. So yeah, Sherry, Janet, start with
Yes. Since I was about 2 years old, I was afraid of elevators, and I wouldn't in elevators. And my mother said even before I went into an elevator, I was afraid of them. And I would say, I don't want to go in the elevators. And I'm still afraid of them, but I go in them now, just because I have to occasionally.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting because my daughter also became afraid of elevators, sort of. Now she's in her 20s and she's afraid of elevators. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Nothing I could remember, nothing my mother knew her.
Yeah.
So it was just.
That is like exactly when you have these things that kind of arise in childhood that aren't super well explained. That's a perfect example of that. So if you take this, Janet, into your own practice, journal on that. Just see what images come to
Right.
mind. If you meditate, think about it. I know when I was going through and doing some of these exercises, I always did the dream kind of focus. Before I went to bed, I just say, I call upon, I don't even remember how I worded it, but some version of this to help me understand why I'm dealing with XYZ. And I did end up having a dream that night that was very extremely related to what I was experiencing. So whether it was a true past life or my subconscious, who knows, but it was helpful in me better understanding that issue. So thanks for sharing, Janet. That's the exact example of what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Sherry, you had raised your hand as well.
It's a little tricky to talk about, but I think that it's similar to what Janet was talking about, that ever since I was really young, I struggled with self-esteem, poor self-esteem issues in almost a debilitating way. And when I had a daughter, I remember like the first support group, at Friends in the, on the east side downtown, just going around the room with a group of mothers and just getting hysterical, like crying hysterically, that I was so afraid I wouldn't be able to give her a better life in that than I had. And, struggling with these debilitating self-esteem issues. And lo and behold, she's been dealing with them for 35 of her 37 years. And I don't know where this comes from. I was so aware of it as I was growing up, and when she was born, it was my biggest fear that this would replicate, my experience. And I still just don't, I mean, I can see where mine might have come from, where it did come from in part, but I tried to correct that, and it happened anyway. And I just wonder, those connections are so palpable.
Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes with these past life connections, particularly family connections, one thing is people will find that when they explore their past lives, in a past life, their mother was actually their child. And sometimes we see this kind of like constant, like these souls are in their lives again and again. And with that, they can be experiencing similar things in each incarnation. And I do want to say thank you for sharing that. That is something really heavy and really difficult to carry through your life. And it can be something that's really hard to shake and to overcome. And I know one of the first past life regression sessions I ever did with one of my clients, that was actually her main takeaway and realization. It wasn't some, big phobia she had. It wasn't some really odd, crazy thing. It just, she was really struggling with her self-esteem and how to change that in her life. And in the past life she saw, that was the theme that came up. In that life, she was also unable to really express herself and really like stand firm in who she was as a person. And coming out of the past life experience, she was like, it's just also clear to me now how this isn't just something, that me as a woman in society I'm struggling with right now, or because of my childhood I'm struggling with. This is something that I've carried for a long time, and now I'm really working to let go of. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah.
Constantly saying to her and trying to say to myself, it's not my fault. It's nothing wrong. It's just there. It's just part of the landscape.
Yeah.
Why it's there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
exactly. Yeah. And that's sometimes a big part of it too, Sherry. I appreciate you saying that. It's not so much, obsessively trying to figure out why it's there, but more so being non-judgmental towards yourself and saying, you know what, this is here right now, and I'm going to keep moving forward and just allowing myself to be accepting to who I am and graceful with myself, even in the difficult moments. So yeah, Sherry. Well, thank you for sharing that. All righty, guys. I did just get a question in the chat. So for handouts for today, I decided what I might do to make it easier on Rachel and the Woman to Woman team and all of you. For the last session, I'm just going to make one master document that includes tips from the chakra session, from this session, and the final session in 2 weeks on breath work. Okay, so we don't have any Google Docs for today. Remember this little script, start playing with it. But in the last session, I'm just going to make one master document so you can have it all in one place if that works with you guys. Okay. All righty. Well, if there aren't any more questions, we're going to go ahead and move along. I do want to go ahead and let you know we've had a lot of really fantastic questions today. We may go a little bit past 1. So if you do have something at 1, maybe come back to the recording and do this part later. But now we're going to move into the hypnotic meditation portion, okay? And I know we have some new faces today, so I'm going to briefly do my hypnotic meditation monologue. If you were here last week or last year, you've heard this before. But if you're not familiar, I really just like to define hypnosis as a deep guided meditation. Today, we're really doing more of a combination of hypnosis and meditation. It just is... most people have done some kind of meditation before. It's kind of like that. You just get way more relaxed, and we're doing a lot more visualization in it. Okay. And there are some things I want you to be aware of as we go through. You might feel a sense of heaviness in your body, kind of like you're melting into relaxation. You might feel a sense of lightness, almost like you're floating, or even a sense of like tingling in your body. All of that's completely normal. Some people also get some excess salivation in their mouth, or their eyelids flutter a lot. Again, this is all normal. As we go through, I want to remind you that you are in complete control, okay? So if I tell you to see the beach and you're like, no, I'm more of a mountains girl, I want to go see the mountains, go. This is your mind. This is your imagination. You have full control and freedom to do what you'd like in this session. And finally, if, as we go through, you need to scratch your nose, you need to shift in your seat. Even sometimes people need to like open their eyes for a second and go back into it. That's totally fine. None of that is going to just like take you out of the relaxed state. Please do whatever you need to be comfortable. And the final thing I'll say, specific for today's session, we're not doing a past life regression. That is really something that has to happen in a one-on-one kind of way, because as we've talked about, you're often dealing with a lot of traumatic stuff, and doing it in a group, a lot of hypnotists, myself included, don't consider that very ethical. Instead, what we're going to be doing is a hypnotic meditation focused on visiting past versions of yourself from this life. So if you've ever done any kind of like inner child work, it's going to be similar to that. And the only thing I also want to mention for you is this can get a little emotional for some people. Just connecting with a younger version of yourself, it's very sweet, but sometimes a little emotional. So just want to put that on your radar. If ever it's getting too intense, focus on the feelings in your hands and your feet. Take a few deep breaths. Do whatever you need to do. Remember, you're in control this whole time. Whatever is going to work best for you as we go through, please feel free to do that. Okay? So that was a longer hypnosis monologue than normal today. Does anyone have any questions before we get started? Okay, fantastic. All righty. Well, you guys are ready. I'd like for you to go ahead and start getting comfortable, getting in a relaxed position. When you're ready, just begin closing your eyes. We'll start with a few deep breaths. So go ahead and inhale for 4. Hold it at the top for 2. And exhale for 6. Good. And again, inhale for 4. Hold for 2. And exhale for 6. Good. And one more time. Inhale for 4. Hold for 2. And exhale for 6. Good. Good. And we're about to embark on a co-creative journey using your vivid imagination. All you need to do is focus on the sound of my voice and the vivid, beautiful images built out in your subconscious, in your imagination and mind's eye as we go through today. So I'd like you to begin by imagining yourself laying on a calm, quiet hill in your favorite place in nature. Maybe you're just on a grassy hill in a field of rolling green hills. Maybe you instead are at the high point on a beach overlooking the ocean. Maybe you're somewhere in the mountains taking in the view of a ridge out in front of you. Whatever it is, just take a moment to build out this image, feeling your body just relax into the soft, comfortable ground beneath you. You notice that it's a warm, sunny day out, and this feeling of the sun in your skin is like a balm to your muscles. Just helps them relax and feel like you're almost melting into the soft, soothing ground beneath you. You just take a moment to notice the colors around you, the sounds. Maybe you hear birds singing in the background. Maybe there's laughter of family and friends in the distance. Notice the blue sky, maybe some beautiful white fluffy clouds. Just take in the scenery, the fresh air, all of the details around you. Good. As you're lying here, you just begin to feel your body relax, muscle by muscle. And this first starts at the crown of your head. You feel your head, all the micro muscles in your face, from your eyes to your eyebrows, your cheeks, your mouth, completely relaxed. You feel this soothing feeling move down your neck. You unclench your jaw, relax any of your neck muscles. This then cascades down your arms, relaxing your shoulders, releasing any tension from your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms, all the way down to your wrists and the tips of your fingers. The sense of relaxation moves down your chest, relaxing any muscles here in your back, to your abdomen, where you release any stomach muscles. Your whole upper body feels completely and totally relaxed. This feeling just begins to roll down your legs as you relax your thighs, release your knees, your calves, all the way to the bottoms of your feet. And it's almost as if any remaining tension just flows right out the bottoms of your feet, and your whole body feels completely at ease, maybe with a sense of lightness, like you're floating. Or for you, maybe it's more of a sense of heaviness, like you're just melting into comfort and ease. Good, good. And as you're on this hill, you've noticed that the blue, sunny sky has been replaced by a twilight night above you. You see what looks like millions of shining stars, a bright full moon all across the horizon. It looks so beautiful. It's almost like it's from a painting. You just take in the sights and sound of this dazzling night sky. You feel more and more relaxed as you notice each new twinkling star. Maybe you even see a shooting star go across the horizon. And in a few moments, I'm going to count from 5 to 1. When I count to 1, you'll find your sense of peacefulness and relaxation going so deep and so completely and utterly calm that you'll feel completely connected into the vision around you. So 5, feeling so good and so relaxed. 4, noticing the twinkling of the stars above you. 3, just going deeper and deeper. 2, noticing as a shooting star goes by. And 1, feeling so good, so relaxed, and so at peace. Good, good. You've now become so deeply relaxed that your mind is receptive to suggestions for positive change. The suggestions that are most relevant and acceptable for you will sink deeply into the subconscious part of your mind and lead to lasting positive changes in your life. As you go deeper into this state of peacefulness, you feel a deep sense of appreciation for all of the lives that you've lived up until this point. All of the people you've been, the obstacles you've overcome, even those moments in life where you may have felt feelings like embarrassment or shame for your actions. You now realize that these all served a larger purpose in the lessons you are here to learn in this life. Today, we're going to take a journey of radical self-acceptance, envisioning the beautiful future in front of you. You're at a point in life where you're ready to move forward and fill your fullest potential. In the past, you may have felt held back by self-sabotaging habits, anxieties, or old beliefs about yourself or your self-esteem. But all of that is changing for you now. You're deciding to live up to your fullest potential, make the most of your life. We're going to do that today by revisiting past versions of yourself. So in front of you, you see a tall, tall spiral staircase. You take a moment to notice the material of the staircase, whether it's wood, metal, or something else. And you see that there are people lining the staircase. It seems to extend ever upwards, all the way into the pink, fluffy clouds above. You take a moment to notice all of the details of the staircase. And as you look more closely, you see that the people lining the stairs are past versions of you. At the bottom, you might see your young toddler self moving through to your teenage years, all the way up into the different iterations of your adulthood as the staircase stretches endlessly into the sky. You go ahead and put your hand on the smooth handrail and begin walking up. After a few steps, you reach a young version of yourself as a child. She is so excited to see you. She greets you with a big hug and is amazed at how far you've come in life. You take a moment to connect with her now, noticing her energy, her vibrance, and giving her any love and support she may need as you connect with her here. Good, good. And you continue walking up a few more steps. And next, you encounter your teenage self. You notice how she dresses, what her energy is like. She, too, is so proud of you. She's in awe of you and of the person you've become. You connect with her and embrace her however feels right. Talk with her if you need. See if she has anything to tell you or messages to share as you're here now. Good, good. And you continue walking upwards. And now you see yourself as a young adult, maybe in your early 20s. Just trust whatever version of yourself here arises. And again, this version of you is in awe of the wisdom you now have, of the challenges you've been able to overcome, of the woman you are today. You connect with this past self however you need, and when you're ready, you continue walking upwards. Good, good. And you just keep walking upwards, connecting with any past versions of yourself that arise as I continue talking. As you see each of these versions of you, you remember what they used to believe about the world, love, relationships, career, self-worth, your goals. And you remember how attached you used to be to those old beliefs. Maybe you think about the challenges you had to overcome at these different phases of life. As you continue climbing up, you begin to feel so powerful. You realize how many things in your life you have already worked through. You see how you used to be held back by old beliefs and difficult challenges, but in your mind, you always knew you would overcome. You knew there was more for you, so you worked through it. You took steps to become more confident, empowered, and moved by inspiration. And as you keep walking up, you notice that these old versions of yourself are now cheering you on. They're so proud of you. And with each step, you begin to feel more and more proud of yourself, from the youngest version of you at the bottom of the stairs to the more recent versions of you near what seems to be the top. You feel proud of the person that you've become today, and you even feel a sense of almost a welling up of joy to the experience that your life has been. I want you to take a moment to notice what you feel as you continue walking past these old versions of yourself that are cheering you on. Good. And as you're now nearing what seems to be the top of the staircase, just below the clouds, you see one last version of yourself, the version of you today, just this morning. You see this version of you with a soft smile on her face. You feel so proud of yourself and how far you've come. You've climbed so high in the staircase of your life, overcoming obstacles, building resilience, setting goals and achieving them, and growing into the person you are today. You realize in front of this version of you today that you will now continue moving forward, making the most of every day, living to your fullest potential and joy. You're no longer inhibited by old habits of the past. Those stay with the past versions of you. Whether it was self-sabotage, anxiety, procrastination, it doesn't matter. Those are all with the old versions of yourself. You've let go of that which does not serve you for good. And with this newfound sense of empowerment, confidence, and inner joy, you now take the next few steps up the staircase to pass through the warm, fluffy clouds. And when you emerge, you find yourself in what looks like your own personal dream world. Just notice what exists in this space. What people are here? What is the scenery like? How do you feel in this space? Just trust whatever your subconscious mind wants to show you in this space today. And as you're here, you realize that everything you've been through has grown you into the person who could reach this place. Each difficulty and each triumph, each version of yourself brought you here. I want you to take a few moments to notice what your mind wants to show you in this dream world above the clouds, trusting whatever comes up. You realize that in this space, you're able to fully accept the person that you are because of all of the past versions of yourself that you've been. You become your highest self here in this safe space of peace and relaxation. And you realize that to be your highest self, all you have to do is accept the person you are right now. Good. And after today, you know that in the deepest levels of your mind, that you're allowed to accept and to love all parts of yourself. You feel a deep sense of love and admiration for the person you are, the skin you're in, your body, and the unique individual that you have grown into. You feel a newfound confidence in your ability to create the life that you desire, and you firmly believe that you are able to overcome any obstacle in your path. Old fears no longer have a hold on you, and you have a sense of peace and calm that grows each and every day. And in the days to come, you'll notice that every day and in every way, you're getting better and better. You feel powerful and create a life that reflects your highest self, because you realize that in any stage of life, you have always been able to overcome and fully live your potential and calling. Take a few more moments to feel through this embodiment of your highest self in this dreamy, safe space of relaxation, peace. Good, good. And in the future, if you are ever feeling unsettled, you can always return to these images and the bright, fluffy clouds or the past versions of yourself to feel an instant sense of peace and calm. Good. So in a few moments, I'm going to count from 1 to 3. At the count of 3, you'll open your eyes, feeling completely alert, awake, and ready to go about your day normally. So 1, beginning to sway a little bit side to side. 2, just wiggling your fingers and toes. And 3, fluttering your eyes open, feeling fully awake, wonderfully alive, and ready to go about the rest of your day. Alrighty, hello, hello, welcome back. Whenever you guys are ready, if anyone feels comfortable, I'd love to hear if you have anything you'd want to share about that experience or any questions that you have. Take your time. You also don't have to, but I always like to open up the space. Yeah, Janet?
I just felt like very sort of floating. Like I really fell asleep for a minute. And then I woke up, but I felt like very relaxed. I was trying to do the images that you were saying, and I think I did. It's hard to tell, but I feel very relaxed right now.
Good.
It's good.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes people are like, yeah, it was just really nice. Don't know the details, but I felt good. Yeah. Well, great. Thank you for sharing, Janet.
I fell asleep again. I wasn't even tired. And I wake up immediately when you tell me to wake up.
Interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. It's Zevia, right? You were the one talking?
No, it's Robin.
Robin. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm like looking at the images and I saw Zevia. I saw your head moving a little bit and I was like,
yeah.
Got it. Robin, I couldn't see you on the screen. Yeah, Robin, you like to fall asleep. That's good. That's good. That means that you're getting into that place of rest and your subconscious mind is still hearing the prompts. And oftentimes people still kind of go through the prompts, even in that kind of half awake, half asleep phase. It's very interesting. But thank you for sharing, Robin. I hope you feel more relaxed at least.
Yeah, great.
Fabulous. So yeah, Zevia, go ahead.
I think after a few minutes, I just was in a different state. I heard, but I couldn't comprehend what you said.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And until I think the end, when you told us to wake up, I
Gotcha.
was in
So
that state. Yeah. I
yeah.
meditate a lot, so I'm used to being in that kind of state, but this is a little bit different.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I mean when I say hypnosis, hypnotic meditations. It's like meditation, but you're going a level deeper.
Yeah.
And sometimes in that state, because it's going from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind, you're still conscious, you're still awake, you're still aware, you're still there. But for some people, especially if you meditate often and you're more accustomed to that state, it's easier for you to just kind of be in that place without a lot of that conscious energy. So it can be kind of like, yeah, I was there, I was floating, but I was kind of in my own world, in that subconscious place. Yeah, that can absolutely happen.
And I love it. I love it with the hypnosis.
Good. Well, I'm glad you
Meditation.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're similar but different, and it's the
they're
kind of
very
thing you can only understand if you've done it, I feel like.
It's very different. You don't know how to express it, but it is very, very different.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad
Thank
you
you.
enjoyed. You're welcome.
I thought it was really powerful, the going up the staircase when you saw the old versions of yourself. I found myself focusing on specific photographs, I guess, of myself in photographs at different stages in my life, like one with a very specific outfit, that type of thing. But then it was actually interesting. I got dizzy doing that. For some reason, the spiral staircase, it was like pretty profound. All of a sudden I got like, it was almost a head rush, and I got quite dizzy. I didn't open my eyes, but I got quite dizzy doing that, which was just an interesting sensation. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I have had that happen to a few other clients. It is more rare, but it is just kind of one of those things. It's not so much the spiral staircase motion. It's more just getting into that relaxed state and your mind kind of going through these different, really like different and new experiences, because we don't really get into these deep states of relaxation often. And sometimes it does just pop up with things like the tingling, the sense of heaviness. And once in a blue moon, I have had clients be like, yeah, there was a moment where I got really dizzy out of nowhere. So yeah, it is one of those rare, odd things that is not as common as like the swallowing, the eye fluttering, but also can happen when you do get into that deep, relaxed state, if only momentarily, generally. Yeah. Awesome.
I felt almost like I was gonna fall asleep at one point, but not quite. It just felt like deeply relaxing and so like comforting.
Yeah. We're getting real relaxed this Thursday. Everybody's taking a midday nap. I love it.
I have to go see patients now. I'm here in the hospital. I need to go and take a nap. But.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just like waking up too with my eyes just trying to wake up, and same thing with, I forgot what the host's name was, but I was picturing myself, what I was wearing, where I was born when I was younger, and then picturing when I was born, what I was wearing when I was a teenager. It was hard. This is the first time I'm getting hypnotized or so I felt like there was a little bit of a pushback, but then I was saying, no, I want to do this. I want to focus, and I focused on your voice. And at times there was like light that was becoming brighter and brighter that was kind of blocking a vision, but I was still saying to myself, I need to keep listening to your voice to keep focused. And
yeah, that can sometimes happen, especially when you're newer to like hypnosis, meditation. Sometimes I honestly think of it kind of as like the conscious mind wanting to like keep tabs on everything at all times, right? And like not really wanting to let ourselves get into that deeper relaxed state. I know that was actually something I struggled a lot with, because I'm someone who's very like, I don't know, not a control freak, but I like to be in control all the time. So I definitely know that kind of feeling. And often with practice, especially with things like inner child work or visioning younger versions of self, that is something that you can really practice and build more of a connection with. And kind of like you were also saying, Rachel, like, and you as well, Bernadette, correct? Yeah. it's kind of like once you have those images of those, you know, past self, your inner child, your inner teenager built out, when you then go back and do meditations like this again, your brain, your subconscious kind of automatically goes to that version of self, and you're able to kind of embrace them, interact with them more, understand them better, because you have more of a map for what you make that look like, if that makes sense. That's helpful at all, Bernadette. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, Bernadette. And Sherry, I see you have your hand raised.
I just really appreciated, especially on the heels of talking about low self-esteem. Like, I really appreciated the opportunity to envision myself in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, really that proposal,
Mm-hmm.
even the proposal was very, very beneficial.
Good.
You know,
I love
like
to hear that, Sherry.
acknowledging everything before me with a really gentle and not a corrective,
Mm-hmm.
but a gentle acceptance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that forward. And yeah, since we had that conversation about self-esteem, as I was going through, I was weaving a few extra things about that in there. So I'm glad that that was helpful. And yeah, taking that view of radical acceptance, the word radical is so strong, but really all it means is allowing yourself to be gentle and graceful with you, no matter where you're at, right? Very much like you were saying, Sherry, of just seeing yourself in a different light where you're allowed to be kind to yourself and be loving to yourself, no matter how you're feeling. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys for being here. To just briefly sum up today, you're leaving with a deepened understanding of past lives. You're now past life experts. Just kidding. It's a very complicated field. I still have so much to learn, but it's fabulous. Different ways to begin exploring your own past lives. So again, remembering that script of I call upon XYZ to help me explore the past life connected to ABC. And then this experience as well today. So in 2 weeks, not next week, but on the 23rd, we're going to be talking about the power of breath work and different breathing exercises you can use to work with your own energy, find a sense of calm. We're going to be specifically talking about techniques you can use, especially in things like an MRI or when you go to the doctor's office, if you have medical or white coat anxiety, things like that. We're going to talk about those kind of specifics. And yeah, that'll be in 2 weeks at the same time. And we'll end with a hypnotic meditation like this, like we always do. So thank you guys for being here. It was so fantastic to be all with you, old faces and new ones. It was wonderful. And if you have any questions about today, anything I can clarify for you about your experience, or if you're just curious and want to drop a line and say hi, you can always reach out to me. My email is hello@authenticityremastered.com. I'm just typing it in the chat for you. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you.
As
Thank you, Emma.
always, you are amazing and wonderful and bring so much passion and expertise. And it's such a wonderful balance of education and experience. And I promised you all in the beginning that you were in for something special, and Emma delivered and exceeded. So we hope that you will take this with you, and we hope that you will come back in 2 weeks. And thank you again so much, everybody, for being here. Most importantly, thank you to Emma for letting us
Thank you.
for the past hour or so.
Awesome.
All right, everybody, have a great day, and be well.
Bye, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.